Welcome back to VNN as we continue our coverage of this triple threat disaster. I'm Jean Meserve, live from the VNN headquarters in Washington, D.C. With Hurricane Kenley response efforts continuing at peak crisis levels all along the east coast of the United States, it is difficult to imagine that our lead story deals with two additional and devastating disasters in the same geographic area of Kenley's wake. But this is our reality. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake originating from the Bunce Fault Line just 70 miles from San Juan, Puerto Rico, struck yesterday during our broadcast and generated a massive tsunami that made impact on the East Coast. Its primary and catastrophic impact is being felt from Florida to North Carolina. Secondary, those life-threatening effects occurred all the way up to New Jersey and the Long Island coastlines. In just a few minutes, we'll be speaking live via sat phone with our Rafael Mendoza, our VNN colleague in Puerto Rico. His vivid first-person accounts filed shortly after the earthquake hit give us our first glimpse of the devastation. But first, let's take a look at the areas that suffered the greatest damage from the tsunami and earthquake. The tsunami has compounded the devastation already wrought by Hurricane Kenley on the east coast of the United States. The wave generated by yesterday's earthquake was 8 to 10 feet high. It first hit the coastline you're seeing here, and then roughly 1 hour after the quake, it roared ashore in Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. Its height at this point, 6 to 8 feet. Its speed, roughly 700 miles per hour. The tsunami then continued up the coast, making landfall all the way up to Long Island. The quake that unleashed the wave was a big one. This was not a minor seismic event. As you can see, we have heavily damaged areas throughout this part of the Atlantic, including the U.S. Virgin Islands and the Dominican Republic. But it was Puerto Rico that really took the brunt of the quake's impact. Preliminary reports indicate substantial infrastructure damage, many buildings down, and there's no electricity or running water. Additionally, traditional communications, cell phones, landlines, internet service are inoperable in 90% of affected areas. That could have a devastating effect on response efforts and critical logistics up and down the East Coast and in Puerto Rico. All this as the aftermath of Hurricane Kenley continues to tax response resources. The list of the dead has grown. 329 casualties have been added for a total of 8,369. It seemed like it couldn't get any worse, but it has. We'll have more about the response to Kenley in just a moment, but first we're speaking with Rafael Mendoza live via satellite phone from San Juan, Puerto Rico. Rafael, we're all happy that you're alive and safe, and thank you for your really terrific reporting. I'm sure your text messages yesterday from San Juan probably saved thousands of lives, but what can you tell us about what you're seeing in San Juan right now?
Hello, Jean. Thank you. Well, as night falls on San Juan, darkness is not going to cover the devastation I have seen here and have reported on throughout the day. There are estimates from several officials that nearly half of the buildings in San Juan are either compromised beyond repair or completely flattened.
Rafael, what have you been able to learn about response efforts, either underway or in the planning stages? And have officials released updated information on the number of deaths there?
Jean, from what I've heard from top-level local officials, larger U.S. government response and relief efforts are delayed due to the aftermath of Hurricane Kenley and now the East Coast tsunami. The official death toll in San Juan alone is estimated at 4,500 lives lost as of today and is expected to grow. I can tell you firsthand that the lack of any means of communications we are used to, phones, internet, television, are all massive roadblocks to even local or regional response efforts, and the problems are magnified when you can't.
Sadly, we seem to have lost the satellite phone connection to Rafael, a reflection of those communications issues he was just talking about. We'll get back to him just as soon as we possibly can. Our thoughts and prayers are with him and everyone feeling the impact of the earthquake and tsunami this evening. But we're now going to be joined remotely by Dr. Stephen Abbott, disaster response planning consultant and former executive director of the American Academy of Meteorology. Dr. Abbott, welcome, and thanks for taking a few minutes to discuss what has to be the most widespread natural disaster crisis to hit America, really since its inception as a nation in 1776.
Thanks for inviting me, Jean.
Doctor, we're entering new territory here. From a disaster response standpoint, what insight can you give into our current situation?
To be frank, with respect to government resources and even national NGO support at this point, we're in dire straits. every resource, every individual, every piece of equipment, technology, and manpower that we employ from agencies like FEMA and other federal disaster relief organizations are completely tapped, just with the response to Kenley. We have never encountered an area this large and with so many towns and cities in crisis mode. And with the addition of tsunami and earthquake damage to confront, we need to rely on non-traditional methods immediately to help save lives and reestablish some kind of order. The first key step, in my opinion, is trying to reestablish some traditional forms of communication in affected areas. And if that's not possible in a very short time frame, then alternative methods must be engaged and used as soon as possible. Communications are key.
Well, Doctor, given this scenario and the lack of resources, are there non-traditional response and communications methods that people could put to use here?
I think that if we're going to be as effective as possible, our approach should be more holistic. I mean, we need to embrace any potential resource in our local, regional, national, even international world that can assist in useful ways. While that is happening, on-the-ground examples of what I'm talking about would be doctors and medical personnel, or any members of a profession like this with response qualifications and skills as a unifier, coming together to assist victims. Their existing networks are important because they're already connected and they don't need to rely on traditional communications to link up. One person can post a sign at their place of work, like a local health center or hospital, and let others know when to meet up and take it from there. And this method applies to communications in general. I mean, it may be weeks until phones and internet are back, so less tech-reliant vehicles like posters, loudspeakers, flyers, or regularly community meetings will certainly be useful.
Thanks, Dr. Abbott, for your time today and for your insights into how communities can better communicate during these unprecedented and trying times. Sometime in the future, we'll do a follow-up segment and find out exactly what worked.
You're welcome.
And if you have any ideas or examples for how victims and responders can overcome the communications breakdown, which is so profound, please visit vnn.com/response and share them. When we return, a look at some new developments, including what's happening on North Carolina's Outer Banks. It's estimated that as many as 8,000 people are stranded there. The storm and the tsunami have severed all routes to the mainland. Stay with us.